Hey everyone, welcome to the Stride to Freedom podcast. My name is Russell Benaroya, and I'm the co-founder of Stride Services, a virtual back-office bookkeeping and accounting firm serving hundreds of clients around the United States. This podcast is designed to help small business owners focus on growth and innovation. In other words, focus on those things that inspired you to start your business in the first place. We call it your genius zone. We do our job on this podcast when business owners feel like they have the trust and confidence to build the right team of partners around them that will help them grow. Thanks for joining. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome back to another Stride to Freedom podcast. I am your host, Russell Benaroya. What is the Stride to Freedom podcast? Well, the Stride to Freedom podcast is designed to help business owners achieve their highest and best use, get in their zone of genius. What is your zone of genius? It is that thing that you do where you lose track of time, that feels effortless for you, where people say, how do you do it? And you don't know because it is so ingrained into what makes you so unique. And we bring folks onto the show that are in the business of helping other leaders achieve their highest and best use. Stride to Freedom podcast is brought to you by Stride Services. What is Stride Services? We are an outsourced bookkeeping, accounting, and fractional CFO firm serving the professional services industry, working with agencies, working with MSPs. And what is our genius zone? Our genius zone is using data to help business owners make better business decisions. Okay, let's jump in. We have a great show for you today. I am so excited to introduce you to Dave Sobel. Dave, how are you, buddy?
I'm awesome. It's great to be here. Thanks for me, Russell. This will be fun.
I'm absolutely thrilled. A little bit of background on Dave. Dave is the founder of MSPRadio and the host of the Business of Tech podcast and YouTube channel. He also co-hosts the podcast Killing It and authored the book Virtualization Defined. This guy is really energizing and incredible. He operates the premier journalistic outlet for IT solutions providers with 5 media properties, over 8,000 listeners, and he provides a treasure trove of insight and action. So you might be wondering, why is this guy on the show? Well, Dave, number one, is cool. Number two, Dave is an entrepreneur. And number three, he gives first and he hustles. He wants to help thousands of IT business owners around the country stay informed so that they can make smarter decisions in their business and their life. Did I get that okay, Dave?
That is a great version of the description. It totally is.
Without like boring
people. The exception of high school me would be just flabbergasted that somebody called me cool. So,
well, that is a perfect segue, which we did not script. But my first question for you is, who was your best friend in high school? Who was your best friend in high school?
It was a guy I knew so I went to actually a private school and he went to the public school, and we had just met and I was laughing. I'm not even remember how I met him, but we had so much in common, and we were sort of the two guys always hanging out, and crossed the barriers between schools and groups and brought some people together, and played role-playing games and video games, and occasionally, 3-on-3 basketball, which we were awful at. But it was that little sort of high school bit. And he went one direction through college, and I went another. I'm not close with him now, but actually do know where he's at. I'm friends on Facebook, and we've talked occasionally.
What do you think he would say about the Dave Sobel high school kid? Like, what kind of kid were you?
Oh, I was a big nerd, just big video game computer nerd, but owned it. Like, I've always sort of owned my own who I am on this stuff. I was the school student body president when I was a senior. With small little community in my school. So I probably was better liked and more comfortable than teenage Dave realized. And it's those you learn a lot about yourself through those awkward teenage years. But I like to always think like I tried to be a good friend. And it's one of those things I'd like to think I still do to this day.
What is the biggest risk you've ever taken that comes to mind for you without overthinking it?
Without overthinking it, it's the on February 14th, 2002, because I'll never forget it because it was Valentine's Day. I lost my job in the morning, proposed to my now wife that evening, and made the commitment during the day to strike out as an entrepreneur. Like that all in a day. Yeah, I think that would just sort of be like my biggest, boldest day was, you know what, do all the life decisions on the same day.
That is a big trajectory shift. A big trajectory shift.
It really was, but at the same time, I knew what I'd wanted. I planned on proposing. I lost my job, and I planned to not do it on Valentine's Day because, quote unquote, that's cliche. But smart me said, "You just lost your job. 2 expensive dinners is not a smart call."
The analytical economical guy.
Totally. They make the smart, savvy move, and so roll that thing together, but don't doubt the decision. I knew I was going to propose. That still was the right decision. So why would I stop? So yeah,
what is one thing that's on your bucket list in the next 1 to 3 years? Something you'd really like to do?
I want to go to Japan. So I love to travel, and I love going on adventures like with my wife. I desperately want to go to Japan, and I'm still working on like convincing her. I'm not done exploring through Asia. And kind of as a child of the 80s and some of the anime and so I'm not like a big anime guy, but it's like that's the entryway with something that I know from my childhood and some of the things I was interested in. I was like, oh, let's start there and then go from there. So that's a bucket list bit. But I always sort of smile and go, I don't keep a long bucket list because I try and actually churn through the things. Like for a long time, like going to the Olympics was on my list, not as a participant, but like attending. Yeah. And I've already done it. Like I've been on a safari. Like I've done some of those things because they just become, rather than a bucket list of things, they're like just, oh yeah, make that happen. If you have this good idea, let's go do it. So.
Another phenomenal segue. You are clearly a man of action. Let's talk about MSPRadio. Like, what is it? Why did you start it? Why did it matter? And what's this journey been like for you?
Yeah, so you have to almost put it in the context of my overall arching career. So I knew as a kid I was going to be in computers, right? I would be in computers. And if you asked me in college, I have a degree in computer science, and I'm always been very proud of that. Like I have an actual degree in computer science. Like I was a programmer, a developer, a consultant. I started out like kind of that version of things. And I live in the DC metro area. So you almost might have expected, like, I could have gone into federal contracting and that might have been like the trajectory, but I didn't. I was in commercial work and I really liked it. And I kind of did 2 startups. And as I mentioned, like I lost my job on the, at a point where on one of those downturns, 2002, right? And things were sort of bottoming out. And I said, you know what, I want to try something myself, because I noticed at the time that the leadership, they're not the ones that lost their jobs. They're not the ones that lost their financial stability. And I always quip. I was like, well, I can run a company into the ground as well as those morons. I'm smarter than those guys. That was literally my idea. And I said, I thought I would either do infrastructure or software because I was kind of good at both. And I picked infrastructure thinking it was easier. And I laughed and looking back, I was like, well, that was a stupid choice. But that was my move. And so I ran a managed service provider for a decade. And that was my first entrepreneurial venture was doing that business. And I was proud of it. And I ran a good regional single person MSP. And I bought a company and it was a dismal failure. And I've talked about that. And then and I expanded. And its biggest, the company was about 1.4 million in revenue. I had a team of 14. Like it was a solid MSP. And then I decided to sell it and move on to the next bit. And lots of people were like, oh, are you going to consult on being an MSP? You're going to teach others? And I was like, but I only ran the one. Like, why would I go teach others? I feel like I haven't learned enough. In fact, I want to go learn about these programs and the way vendors work, and I want to be smart at that. And I went and ran community for a RMM platform called Level Platforms. We sold that to AVG. Then I didn't want to stay there anymore, and I moved to a little company called GFI. We became Logic Now. We sold that to SolarWinds, a company everyone knows, right? Then I stayed through the IPO, and it was all about learning, right? All these trajectories were about learning and growing and understanding. And then that reached its natural course. It was time to move on. I'd been there 6 years. And everyone said again, are you going to consult, Dave? Or are you going to go out there and like teach others? And I was like, no, I think I want to solve another problem. And it gets to the why of MS, because you have to see all of these, like, what are you going to do with yourself? So the core problem I want, sorry about that.
That's good.
So
okay.
The core problem that I wanted to deal with MSPRadio was the idea that I think the audience matters. And I draw this triangle of media all the time. And I say, there's the tech journalists who love gadgets and Silicon Valley and startups and unicorns and like are allergic to services. And you get the business media, and it's like the same thing. They love startups and Silicon Valley, and they love entrepreneurs, but man, they're like allergic to services. And I always looked at the services realm of media, and I said, I think they view the audience too much as the product. Like that they're serving the audience up to their advertisers as a lead, not as a respected audience. I said, well, I remember being the MSP. I remember not getting enough value out of that. Well, maybe I can work on that. Maybe I'll go to a very core tenet of, if you provide good information, people will be interested in that. And there is a certain classical honor to, it's okay to have an ad. Like if the ad is relevant and associated with the content, you can learn things in ads. Because, by the way, we've all attended these webinars and long sessions where it's an ad, like it's embedded, like it, but if they go too much to the side of not worrying about the content being any good, it's a waste of your time. But if the content's really good and you associate it with a relevant ad, you can respect your audience's attention, and it's okay to sell an ad. And that was my basic concept, because I looked and I said, I understand the audience, I've been that. I actually understand the buyer. I've been a vendor and I've bought those ads. I know what they will want. Smash the two together. Let's go do it. And then my core idea was the Business of Tech podcast, of course, which is what I do every business day. And I really went back to what did I like doing best? I really loved the keynote that I would give at all of our events. And I would do like a business analysis, and I would talk about, here's all the data that I'm seeing, and this is why I think it's important, and here's where I think it goes directionally. And I said, well, why don't I just take that bit? That was always the best piece of content in my mind. Everyone really liked it. They thought I was reasonably good at it. That'll be my podcast. And here we are 3 years later, and I laugh and smile every day. People listen, and I'm always so appreciative that, like, I get up every day and I do my writing and I write and put it together, and they really listen. Like they really actually take the time to listen to my stuff. And I just am so grateful that I can do that I can be a trusted source. And I hope I get it right most of the time. And I'm okay if I get it wrong, because if somebody listens to me and they think I'm 100% wrong, I immediately go, please go make a ton of money knowing that I am completely wrong and you figured it out. So.
Again, this is a big generalization I'm going to ask you to draw, but what are MSPs or IT service providers broadly? What are they seeking when they learn from you, in your opinion, right? Like, what's the story in your head about what they're seeking? What are they looking for?
Yeah. So what I really hope that they're looking for is somebody that understands their business, that's looking at the market and trends and news stories and plucking out ones that they needed to know about based on actually being informed on what they do. You know, I've done that job. Like I've done that job, and I don't sit here and proclaim that I like still do it. But I have
Mhm.
done that job and I understand it intimately. And I've thought a lot about it. And I've thought a lot academically about how the business works. And so I look at it and go like, well, what would I want to know about? What would my attention be best served with? And then it's not just the news, but the why. I do a segment called Why Do We Care on every story. And it's about the like, well, this is why I picked this. This is the bit of insight I got out of it, or the question it raises for me, or the where my thinking's at, so that you get the understanding of why I thought it was important, because that's actually, I think, the important linkage. Like, here's the item, you'll want to know about it. Here's why I think it's important. You might decide I'm wrong. But cool, right? Like if you think I'm wrong, that's okay too. But it's not just the element of like, here's the news story with no context. Here's the news story and my perspective on what I saw from it. Now you've got enough to make a decision on your own about what to do with it. And that's what I hope that they're getting from it, is somebody who thinks like them, who understands their business, is looking out for stuff and trying to give you warning signals or directional signs of what I see on the market. Hey, now it's up to you to take that information to do something with it.
When you were running your MSP, if you had access to the Business of Tech podcast, what revisionist history here, of course, but
Sure.
how do you think like some of those pearls of insight might have like on the margin kind of influenced how you might have thought about your business opportunity, or thought about serving customers, or thought about the services that you offered?
I like to think I would have tried to cut through the bullshit a little bit more.
Okay.
MSPs in particular are sold to a lot. They're sold to a lot. There's a
Yeah.
lot of businesses out there that know that they are the path to the small customer. It's an indirect market, right? Like a big software technology company has a tough time getting out to all of the small companies that are out there. So the
Right.
best way to do this through the MSP. This is generally recognized as like the IT channel, right? So there's a lot of people who are selling to that group. There's a lot of noise. I look back on my MSP career and there are a few times I'm like, oh yeah, I got sucked in by the selling. Like I got sucked in by the hype, or I got sucked in by the latest vendor trend, or what I was being, pushed toward. And by the way, I did that job. I spun, I sold, I did the bit. I know how the game is played. And so I was like, I've seen both sides of this, which is why I always say, like, I expose my thinking so that you know where I'm coming from. So because I just wanted to be transparent now. So I look and say, like, I hope MSP me would have said, oh, okay, I see more clearly what I'm being told or pushed, or what the difference between kind of a market reality versus the story that's told.
Clarify for me your target audience. I know it's MSPRadio, and we talk about MSPs, and Stride serves MSPs, but does that do a disservice to those businesses and maybe the industry at large, that MSP is this catch-all that isn't entirely representative of what those businesses are or where they want to direct their future? I'm curious if you could comment on that.
Plus, it's a horribly overloaded term. Like
overloaded.
I actually actively dislike the term MSP, and it's in my company name.
I was going to say, despite
it being in my company name, but I laugh and go, my product is the Business of Tech, right? So I want people to associate the podcast versus the business. The business is the MSPRadio, right? That's the back office that powers it. The product is the Business of Tech, which actually perfectly encapsulates what I'm trying to do. I think about the business of delivering IT services. And I think about that in a very broad sense. It's a way to do it, to deliver it by trading time for money. We generally call this break fix. We are generally very derisive of the model. But you know what? There's a business in trading time for money to deliver expertise. Thousands of years, people have been doing it this way. You can do it in technology too. I think there are ways of delivering it as a service. I think there's ways of doing it on a recurring revenue basis. I think you can do it in all kinds of layers. It doesn't have to just be in infrastructure. It could be in what I like to talk about, the work layer. It can be in data consulting. It can be in the security, and it's a very large category. And by the way, it doesn't have to necessarily just be in Small companies. Probably we talk about MSPs, we often mean small companies, but I have conversations with my government contracting friends who discuss, are like, oh yeah, we do what you call managed services. Like we do that for the Fed, or we do it for, for this agency or that agency, or for the military, or like, and I think about it in all spectrums because there's a lot of these pieces that are very similar. So for me, it's IT services, the delivery of IT services that is generally required when implementing any IT product.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to pause. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, great. You also operate a bit on both sides of the market. So you are in service to IT service providers. You've also provided a lot of education to people that want to invest in the industry.
That's a funny little business.
Tell me about that.
Well, so I look at myself and I sort of say, I am this island unto myself at a certain degree of being like, I try and put on a journalist hat, although I'm not a journalist. I'm actually a little bit more comfortable with analyst as the description, but it's both. And so if I have independent expertise, there are people seeking it out. And one of those groups happens to be investors. And it happened by accident. It literally just, when I went independent and started throwing content onto the web, investors found me, and I found this, they would happily pay for my time to explain things to them. And I laugh and go, like, I just started creating more content. I have a little web series called What I Tell Investors, which I literally don't promote. I just put on my on my YouTube channel, and I don't promote it at all. And it really is just I learned these questions that they always ask, and so I just make videos of it. And by the way, these investors then continue to hire me for more and more questions. And it's a nice slice of the revenue. I look at it as the same way. Is like, look, if you're trying to understand this space, coming to somebody who just spends their time immersed in it is a perfectly reasonable bit to do. My main audience is those actually delivering it, but that doesn't mean that I can't provide that same set of insights for people that are trying to potentially put their money into it. So I've done that as a bit. I do both the consulting and then I do some of the content generation on it for it, because if people want to hire me from that perspective, I'm always happy to do it. I make the same statement, by the way, for a little MSP. You want my time? I'm always happy to give it. Like, usually I always quip that, so the first call is always free. I don't mind talking to people, but if they want to get into recurring calls, I even have a link on my website. It's like you can book a consulting call if it really is important to you, and I'm happy to give advice. Then what you do with it on all fronts is entirely up to you.
I wonder, is the way that you have built your business, which is a lot of media, social media, you're out there, you're consistent, you're a voice. Yes, you deliver a lot of quality content. You also spend energy building awareness. I wonder if just watching how you have built your business, the tools that you use, the way you outreach is itself an interesting learning for business owners that think about the greatest problem to solve, which is top of funnel, right? Generating leads.
Yeah, it's funny because I legitimately think, I always think of the podcast as it's a product. You have to get it in people's hands. You cannot assume that they will magically know about it. This is not a build it and they will come. Don't get me wrong. I try and be incredibly proud about every single bit that I do. And every day I agonize on writing and getting it right. But if I can make the most perfect piece of content ever, and if no one knows about it, it does not matter. So I have to get the product into people's hands. And that means a systematic approach to marketing your product. My product is a podcast. Get out there and you have to do it. You have to get it out there. My call to action doesn't involve a credit card the way that most people's product does. That doesn't mean there's not a call to action. I laugh and go, like, there's a reason every YouTuber in the world says like and subscribe, right? That is our call to action for you to convert. And if I don't ask for the business, you won't give it to me. So I always say, like, please listen to my podcast. best. I hope it brings value to you. I hope it becomes part of your bit. The only way you'll know is if you try. So you're exactly right. Like I'm very systematic about the way that I think about getting that out. And so you asked, like, who is my audience? I have thought about it not only from the perspective of like they're delivering IT services, but the typical marketing questions. As a general rule, I am looking to target people in North America that are interested in digital consumption, that are interested in consuming either YouTube video content or podcast audio content. Those are criteria, right? And I think about it, they generally are going to be business owners or involved at managerial and leadership levels. Like, you think about all these marketing traits to build your audience. And then again, I go out there digitally. I'm doing it both organically through the regular sharing of content that I find relevant, of my stuff. And then additionally, you'll go out there with a paid engagement. I don't mind saying I spend money on Google ads. I spend money on YouTube promotion. Why? Because that is my product that I need to get into people's hands.
What I appreciate about the business of tech, and maybe it's your MSPRadio thesis, which is short form, succinct content, highly targeted. And that's what we as business owners need to be thinking about. Sometimes we believe that verbose explanations about our value proposition, and we go on and on and on and on, and people just switch off after about 2 minutes. But you've really created this condensed content structure. And I'm curious if you comment on that and how you've thought about it.
I almost should print it and put it on the wall because I think about it all the time. Respect their time.
Yes.
I think about that all the time. Respect their time. And there's two parts to that. The first part of that is my stuff had better be good. Like, I better be proud of it. I don't write filler. I don't write extra. I try and be judicious with my thought because I want to respect the investment that they want to get something out of it. But the second part is respect their time, literal time. Do not waste it. Like, if it can be done in 3 minutes, do it in 3 minutes. It does not need 15 minutes. It doesn't need an arbitrary hour. I've been that guy on both sides of the traditional webinar. Well, it must be a 30-minute webinar, right? Of course it has to be a 30-minute webinar because everybody will tell you, like, and I like to go, like, why does it have to be 30 minutes? I have 4 minutes of things to say. The rest is filler.
Yeah.
And by the way, for everybody who thinks about this, it is hard. Like, it is way harder to get your 4 minutes of excellence than it is to just fill. Right? Like, you've got to think about that and write and edit and do all and be precise. I'll give people insight. Like, I'm not using it now. Like, this is just us talking. I use a teleprompter. Like, I write, I use a teleprompter. I do multiple takes. I edit it out. Like, heaven forbid there's an in there that I didn't like want, or it was, I'm doing it now, right? Like, I got to respect their time. And so respect their time always is a mantra for me.
I really like that. And we do a lot of editing on this podcast. I mean, the amount of post-production editing is out of control. We get rid of all the all the pauses. Your comment motivates me to like end this podcast in the next 30 seconds because we're like over 30 minutes, but very on point, which I appreciate.
I try.
You're a good man. What is something people don't usually ask you that you wish they did to get to know you better, the business better, your why?
It's a hard question because you want to go on and go, like, I don't think in business we understand enough about who people are outside of business. And it's, I mean, I'll say I'm a husband. I don't have kids. I have 2 cats. I live just outside DC and I love it. Like, I love this area. I love being by the nation's capital. Like, there's a lot of people who work really hard to be really smart and work on big issues. I love that. My neighbors, like, people around me do cool stuff. I'm into baseball. We were riffing about that a little bit. I'm a video game guy. Like, I love video games. I'm into the classic retro stuff. I'm into the modern stuff. I love to travel. I like food and drink, and it's one of my vices a little bit, sometimes too much. Like, and knowing all of these, and by the way, I'll laugh, like, and I come from a really complicated family. Like I've got this epic story of my parents' divorce and all that kind of stuff. All of these things go into making a person, and it makes your why. Like it makes a lot, like, why do I work? Why do I work? Because I want to feed some of my hobbies too. Like I don't get up every day just to do IT service. I love this space. I think it's super fun. I think it's super interesting. But I also do it because, like, I wanted to buy the new Xbox. I need income to do that, because I wanted a PS5. I wanted to take on the new video game. Like I was at opening day yesterday. Like, to be able to do that, you have to have enough financial security to do that stuff. And those pieces all matter. And it's really important to think of people as a holistic thing. I struggle with this myself with others, but to remember that, like, when somebody else stumbles, 9 times out of 10, it's because of something not related to work. They're having a bad day. They got in a fight at home. Their kids are being really difficult. There's a sick family member. Like, and you have to remember the person. And it's hard when you say, like, well, what does people want to know? But it's like, I want people to ask me about all the other stuff, like all the other stuff that I get jazzed about, because it is what makes me a person. And it drives all my thinking.
I so appreciate your response. And as you may or may not know, I wrote a book on this topic that published 5 months ago called One Life to Lead: Business Success Through Better Life Design, which is all about how do you take off the armor and acknowledge that how you lead your life and the behaviors and the patterns that you exhibit directly correlate to how you lead in business, and your willingness to humanize the entire experience, your own and those around you, your employees, your vendors, your clients, your partners, makes the journey a whole lot more interesting, and typically a whole lot lower drama, because we're not so busy creating this villainization or victimization, which oftentimes pervades the business environment.
Right. And you also, then I'll add, because you have to remember that, like, you come with your own baggage too.
Totally.
Let's observe 2 white guys, right? Like,
right.
It's okay. It's okay to own that. By the way, that culturally may mean we may be bad at talking about our feelings or talking about like those elements. But by the way, we come with a certain perspective, and we also come with certain blind spots. and you gotta know that. You gotta know you have blind spots to those things in order to be better about it. So, and I think, owning those identity things, it isn't a bad thing. It actually gives space to grow, to be better, and to be more effective. By the way, you can be a way better leader the moment you realize you have these areas you don't understand.
We talk about the distinction between content and context. Content is what you hear, the circumstance. Context is what's underneath it. But I'm going to get back to MSPRadio and the business of tech, which is really seems to be how you approach the product, which is, yes, there's content here for sure, but there's also context. There's the why. Like, why does this matter?
Yeah, that is exactly how I think about it. It's how I think about it all the time. Because it's all data. These are all data points, right? And it's all how you interpret them. And I have always sort of thought that one of the things that I think I'm particularly good at is looking at a series of data points and identifying the trends. I've always thought I'm pretty good at that. And so for me, when you talk about the product and what I do in the business of tech, what I'm hoping I'm doing is just providing that, whatever my superpower is, just providing it. Like, here you go. This is what I do. This is how I put all these trends together. This is what I see. Here's my analysis of it. And then I always keep saying, and then not getting so like hung up on, I don't have to be right. This is where I'd put my bets. This is how I'd execute. And by the way, I'm betting on a bunch of this stuff. But if you think I'm wrong, I always say, go forth, kick my ass,
go big,
go big, and come back and tell me about it. Come back and tell me. I look forward to the day when people come back and tell me, Dave, I listened to you, and God, you were wrong, and I made so much money. Cool.
What's a recent podcast episode that comes to mind for you that you'd share with us, like why you chose that as being the topic of the day?
So I have a fixation on the return to work stuff. I freely admit I've been covering a lot of the, who's going back into the office. I just picked out a story recently where Activision Blizzard employees pushed back really hard when the company tried to lift the vaccine mandate in the organization. They pushed back really hard, and not only did they push back on that, they then added a list of demands of things they wanted, and they threatened and there was a small walkout over it. And by the way, leadership rolled that back. I looked at that and I go, oh yeah. This is leadership getting out over their skis, thinking they have more power in these situations than they really do based on the current situation. There's a lot of employee power right now versus employer power. And the last 2 years have exposed a lot of lies that managers have said. My favorite lie, well, you need to be in the office. Well, we proved that one isn't entirely true, didn't we? like we all conducted a massive worldwide experiment on that one and proved it's not true. And so employees are saying, I wonder what other lies they've been telling me. This is not a great time for leadership to sort of BS their way through this stuff. It's okay to not know, own that space. And I think there's tons of opportunity in this space to innovate. I think small companies can come up with really clever answers that work for them, for their employees, and the kinds of people that they want to appeal to. Particularly, as I like to think about smaller companies, you don't have to appeal to everybody. You just have to appeal to the right ones, both right employees, right customers, right? Like you just have to be the right ones. And by the way, I recognize that the issue I just brought up may be politically charged for some. Own it for what your reality is. Again, if you think I'm wrong, own it. Go be competitive and own and go in a different direction. Now, in this one, I happen to think I'm right. I'm going to stand by it. I'm going to make my bets there, but that's okay. And that's that. So really where that's an example of one where I looked in and said, yeah, this is proving to me my thesis that leadership does not have the power they think they are. I'll say I've made my prediction. I said, I think all of these return to work declarations
edicts
are lies. They are lying liars, and it will not play out. Now, I do think that these executives, they believe what they're saying. They will just do not have the power they think they do. And this will play out really quickly, particularly as competitive organizations will start giving very quickly going, oh, I'm not fighting that fight. I'm going to win those employees, or I'm going to take on the people in a tough labor market or a dynamic labor market. You pick the battles you want to win, not the ones that are just superfluous.
The second half of the experiment, the global experiment, continues.
Oh, it totally does.
To be continued.
Yeah, and may you live in interesting times, right? Like I mean, and this is the dichotomy of IT guys that always laughs at me. You literally we're in an industry where things change all the time, and this is a group of people that constantly bemoan change.
Yes.
Like, own the roller coaster. Like it could just be like, just go with it. It's so much more fun to own the roller coaster and go up and down and know it's side and side and just go for the ride. I get having to get off periodically. Like you'll vomit if you ride the roller coaster over and over and over again. But that's also what vacations are for.
Yeah. Well, your message is a good one, a provocative one that's applicable to anybody that's in a position of leadership, not just IT owners.
Oh, totally. Own it.
Yeah. I want to give you some space to let people know the best way to find you, the best way to plug into your content. How do they do it? Where do they do it?
So everything is linked off of businessof.tech. There's a big blue button. If you can find it, you can find my Business of Tech podcast on all your favorite podcatchers. If you prefer the video version, there's the YouTube channel. All the links are right there. Again, businessof.tech. tech. I've even got written versions of my stuff for those that like to read it. So it's available that way. That's the way you get started. And I'm easy to find. I'm also linked there on all the socials if you want to find me. And I post even my calendar and my email address. So I'm easy to find.
Dave, it has been an absolute privilege to spend time with you. You were gracious to be so responsive early on and connecting. And I think we built a fast friendship, fast connection, which we would have the same conversation if we weren't even on a podcast. And that's what makes you special, magnetic, informative, connected, and just grateful to learn more about MSPRadio, the business of tech, why you do what you do, the impact you're trying to make, and for the thousands of people today that are benefiting from your work. So thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. This has been great fun. And I'm right there with you. It's been a great connection.
I really appreciate it. Okay, everybody, have a great week. We will see you on the next Stride to Freedom podcast. Talk to you soon. Bye.